So with that, I think we'll get started in honor of those who have arrived already. And as others join us, we will hopefully they'll see the chat line and join us as well. My name is Donald Whitehead, and I am the Executive Director for the National Coalition for the Homeless. The National Coalition for the Homeless is the oldest organization working exclusively with and on behalf of our brothers and sisters who are homeless today. The Bringing America Home Now is a grassroots campaign, a grassroots effort to end homelessness in America. The National Coalition and its partners are launching this campaign because we fundamentally believe that our country, the richest country in the history of the world, should not have people living on sidewalks and storefronts, under bridges, and on the back seats of automobiles. In the words of Congressman Elijah Cummings, we are better than this. We must end homelessness, and we must end it now. This campaign will bring together organizations from across America who are tired of waiting. For 4 decades, we have waited for a comprehensive solution for homelessness. The responses that we've gotten have been myopic approaches that pitted one population against the other. Our new administration has raised the bar on resources to address homelessness. Many Americans will benefit from the Biden administration efforts, and we are extremely grateful to them. We are extremely grateful for the new level of attention and the resources. However, it's not enough. So please mark today on your calendar. Today is the beginning of the end of homelessness. Today we begin some good trouble. We know that ending homelessness is not a priority for most of our elected officials. We must make it a priority. We must demand a restoration of the basic necessities needed to pursue happiness, the happiness that we were promised in the Declaration of Independence, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the unalienable rights that America promised are not being lived up to. America is not living up to that promise. The mayors and governors who choose criminalization over social services are not fulfilling the promise of life and liberty. It is impossible to pursue happiness under a bridge on the downtown streets of LA or San Francisco. Happiness is hard to achieve from the back seat of a Buick in Kissimmee or freezing cold camp in the woods of Cincinnati. The pursuit of happiness is more than elusive if you're a teen couch surfing in Washington, D.C., because your parents will not accept you for who you are. There is no happiness when a woman's dreams are deferred by domestic violence in Des Moines. We are committed to returning the hope of happiness to the millions of Americans that are experiencing homelessness in America. We will do it with them by our side, though. This is not a campaign for people experiencing homelessness. It's a campaign with people experiencing homelessness. Today, we'll hear from our partners who are policymakers and our partners who are service providers and advocates, and most importantly, our partners who are people with lived experience. We have assembled what I believe to be some of the brightest minds that the world has to offer when it comes to ending homelessness. And our goal today is to make the case for you to join us in some good trouble. Trouble that we are hoping can end the nightmare for our brothers and sisters without homes. I thank you all for joining today's webinar. Before you leave, we're going to ask you to join us and get started with us in this growing campaign. The time to end homelessness in the US has come. So join me and my friends as we urge you to bring America home and bring America home now. We thank you again for joining us. We'd like for you right now to listen to an amazing video presentation. So thank you again.
On October 7th, 1989, tens of thousands of people marched on the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. They gathered to hear Tracy Chapman talking about a revolution and Stevie Wonder call out for love and kindness. They gathered to be inspired by the words of Jesse Jackson, Susan Sarandon, Martin Sheen, Coretta Scott King, and the event's organizers from the National Coalition for the Homeless, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the Community for Creative Nonviolence, and the National Union of the Homeless. They gathered to stand in solidarity, those who were homeless themselves, along with their housed allies. They gathered to protest the severe lack of safe, decent, and affordable housing in the United States. October 7th was a sunny autumn day, and the flags surrounding the Washington Monument flapped in the breeze as marchers who had crossed the Potomac River from the Pentagon merged with a mass of people gathered at the monument. Others walked the nearly 4 miles from RFK Stadium, where they had been sheltered in the days leading up to the march. As they converged, the marchers made their way past the AIDS quilt laid out in rows on the National Mall, down Connecticut Avenue toward the Capitol. Some estimates put the number of protesters at 150,000. They came from the streets and the shelters, from churches, union halls, and school playgrounds. They came from kitchen tables and park benches where local organizing efforts were born. They came from Miami and Portland, Denver and Los Angeles. They came by the busload from Boston and Atlanta. More than 500 people came by bus from Chicago alone, and a group of 250 people walked to Washington from New York City, a trek of 16 days. Children from Dayton, Ohio pulled red wagons full of letters to Congress pleading for action. And people came from the streets of the nation's capital itself, where they would sleep again that night, and the next, and the next. Together they had one simple demand: housing now for all Americans. Specifically, they wanted restoration of $24 billion in federal funding for affordable housing that had been slashed from the nation's budget under the Reagan administration. These cuts, along with the growing income and wealth gap, were widely understood to be a major driver of the dramatic rise in homelessness in the early 1980s. Many local marches prior to October 7th built momentum that culminated in the Housing Now March, which was and remains the largest collective outcry for housing as a basic human right in the nation's history. Building on previous advocacy victories, such as passage of the Stuart B. McKinney Homeless Assistance Act in 1987, the momentum galvanized by the Housing Now March led to additional victories, such as creation of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act in 1990. The march also coincided with a groundswell of activism. Local grassroots organizing flourished, and acts of civil disobedience occurred across the United States, including occupation of empty buildings, a coordinated multi-city Take Off the Boards campaign during the months leading up to the Housing Now March. Many of these efforts were led by people who were themselves homeless, and by the faith community, which has played a central role in responding to the homelessness crisis. While Housing Now was organized in response to the epidemic of contemporary homelessness in the United States, it is important to recognize that homelessness did not begin in the 1980s. In fact, historians such as Roberta Ann Johnson, Kenneth Kuzmer, Todd DiPastino, and others have documented waves of homelessness that go back to the earliest days of colonization. Over the centuries since it first appeared in the cities of the Eastern Seaboard, homelessness has impacted some more than others. Native Americans and African Americans, immigrants, veterans, people with disabilities, children and youth, and the elderly. Homelessness has spiked with each major economic recession and has receded as more humane policies have gone into effect, including veterans' benefits after the Civil War, Social Security for all Americans, Medicare and Medicaid, and a massive infusion of federal funding for affordable housing in the years following World War II. This combination of housing, healthcare access, and guaranteed income caused homelessness to recede, so that when the homelessness epidemic exploded in American cities in the 1980s, it felt new. Since then, millions of Americans have experienced firsthand the horrors of living without a home. Men, women, children, youth and young adults, veterans who fought for this country only to be failed by it when they returned from war, people suffering from mental illness and addiction, people fleeing domestic violence. In cities across the U.S., people of color, particularly Native Americans and African Americans, remain disproportionately overrepresented among the ranks of those experiencing homelessness. Homelessness is not new, it is not colorblind, and it is not inevitable. Homelessness can be shaped by changes in public policy and funding priorities, which can in turn be shaped by grassroots organizing and civil disobedience. As the United States continues to face homelessness on a massive scale well into the 21st century, it is important to ask what we can learn from the past, from our successes and our failures. First, community-based grassroots organizing is an essential catalyst for social change. Those in power never cede that power without well-organized, focused outside pressure. Political will is absolutely essential to create social change and to drive resources to solve homelessness, but it will never occur without strong, unified organizing. Second, those most affected by homelessness must be in decision-making roles around funding, policy, programming, and advocacy. Finally, we need a dramatic recommitment of resources at the national level to restore affordable housing to a level that allows every American to have a roof over their head. Such a commitment requires political will and a collective commitment to move beyond our society's complacency and acceptance of homelessness as inevitable. As we seek to learn from the past and chart a better course for the days ahead, we must rethink our current approach, recommit to grassroots organizing, and elevate the voices of people experiencing homelessness.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Jeff Olivet and others for putting together that amazing video. We're going to move on with our speakers, and as I shared with you, we will hear from people with lived experience. And one of the people who has experienced homelessness in this country, who has risen to incredible heights, is former presidential candidate, former mayor, former congressman, soon to be mayor again, Dennis Kucinich. Dennis, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
I am very grateful to join you on this important webinar to participate with those who have committed to making sure that the nation, state, and cities address this ongoing crisis of homelessness. Yes, it's true that at a very early age, my family ran into real difficulties economically. And as the family grew, we found that it was very difficult to make ends meet. And during that time, when you had 2 children and you didn't own your home and you wanted to move and you had to move because the landlord would only accept 4 people in a house, you'd have to go and find a place to live. So it became a real challenge as the family grew because more and more would reject a growing family. By the time I was 17, my mother had had 7 children, and we had lived in about 21 different places, including a couple of cars. And the experience of homelessness stayed with me, and all of the things that come with it: the social disorganization, the being cut off from community, the uncertainty which visits people, the vulnerability which happens. And those lessons of life experience, when you're a child, you don't really know how serious a matter it is. But when you're an adult and you can reflect back, you understand how important it is that not only that we address the issue of homelessness, talk about it, but that we come up with tangible solutions, temporary housing, healthcare, education, and permanent solutions that give people accessibility to affordable housing, provide people with economic opportunities, provide people with mental health counseling, because we know that some of our brothers and sisters who are out there are also struggling emotionally. This is really a moment in our country's history where we get a chance to use the resources of America to lift up everyone. And I'm so grateful for the work that all of you are doing in that regard. But at every level, whether it's our home here in Cleveland, Ohio, or across the country, where hundreds of thousands of people every day don't have a roof over their head, are sleeping under bridges, on sidewalks, and are sometimes being rousted by law enforcement. We have to take a stand on their behalf. And those of us who had that experience of being homeless, and when we're in public life, we must remember where we have come from. We must remember the struggles that people have had along the way, and how, just because you're homeless, look at that person. That homeless person is a future doctor, a future architect, a future teacher, a future policeman, a future mayor, a future congressman. We have to see people as they are, but also as they can be with our help. So I'm so thankful to each and every one of you for making it possible for the consciousness raising that must occur in order to change things. And I remain personally committed to making sure that each and every person who I see on the street realizes that there's a brighter day ahead, as long as we recognize our essential brotherhood and sisterhood, as long as we recognize that is also us. It's not just there, but for the grace of God, go I, there I am. Thank you so much, and love to all of you.
And Dennis, thank you so much. You are an amazing example of the possibilities that are available when we just continue to love our neighbors and continue to provide them hope. So thank you for all you've done over the years in Congress, in Cleveland, and hopefully that you'll be able to do it again, because we know that how amazing you've done with work in that community. So thank you for joining us, and we appreciate all that you do.
Much love to all of you, and thank you for caring for people, and continue to do that, because as we do that, we're going to be transforming people's lives, including our own. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, and we really appreciate you. Such amazing words. We're going to hear next. We're going to have another video presentation. He wanted to be here today, but unfortunately, because of schedules, he was unable to, but he did provide video comments. So we're keeping with the Ohio theme. The current senator from Ohio, Senator Sherwood Brown, will share with us some comments.
I'm Sherrod Brown. It's a privilege to serve the people of Ohio in the United States Senate. Thank you to the National Coalition for the Homeless for your advocacy on behalf of all people bringing together this grassroots campaign to end the crisis of homelessness. At the beginning of the year, I took over as chair of the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee. Most people around Washington call it simply the Senate Banking Committee. Far too much attention was paid to Wall Street, very little to housing, almost none to urban affairs in this committee, from this committee's title. Well, that's now changing. We held the committee's first hearing in 9 years in the state of housing. We held a hearing on the legacy of racial discrimination, from the black codes to Jim Crow to redlining. We know that without affordable homes and safe neighborhoods, all the other challenges we face just become harder to overcome. People don't live as long, their medical care is inadequate, they don't have nearby grocery stores with good food options. Safe, stable, affordable housing is the gateway to opportunity and a healthy life, and too many Americans are simply locked out of it, and that is not what we should be as a country. That's why we've worked to provide additional help for people experiencing homelessness. We did that in the CARES Act. We passed emergency rental assistance to help more people stay in their homes. In working with all of you, we made sure that the American Rescue Plan was passed in March to provide new funding to people experiencing homelessness from the immediate effects of the pandemic, while providing, this is really important, providing permanent pathways out of homelessness. This includes funding for 70,000 new emergency housing vouchers for people experiencing homelessness. As we turn now to President Biden's big infrastructure package, we must continue investing in affordable housing, because housing is infrastructure by any definition. Housing is the key to ending homelessness. We need to invest in all of the social supports people need to succeed: raising wages, education, improving access to healthcare, treating housing and homelessness like the civil rights issue that it is. It means rebuilding an economy that works for everyone. So keep speaking out, making your voice heard. We need your voices. We need your grassroots initiatives. We need your stories told across the land. That will make a huge difference. I look forward to working with all of you in the months ahead.
We thank Senator Brown for those amazing comments. And as I said in my opening, we thank this Congress and this administration. They have shown a great deal of support for homeless people and provided additional resources. And those are our champions. We really admire the work, but there's a whole lot of other congressmen that we have to get on board. And I thank the senator for all his work, and hopefully we can get some of those other senators to join us in this fight. Sherrod Brown has always been a champion, and we do really thank the senator for all the work he does. Now we're gonna move to a couple of people that have really played an important role in launching this campaign, helping to design it, and helping to do some of the work at the National Coalition as well. Our next speaker is the Vice President of the National Coalition for the Homeless. She's also a professor at Stetson University, and I'll let her tell a little bit more about herself. But our next speaker is Dr. Rajni Shankar Brown.
Thank you so much, Donald, and much gratitude for everyone who's in this space today as we unite with focus and persistence and love and mindful, unified action. Namaste. I am Dr. Rajni Shankar Brown. I am the Vice President at the National Coalition for the Homeless and a professor and endowed chair of social justice education at Stetson University. The global pandemic of the coronavirus, or the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in terms of systemic racism, are vivid reminders that equity doesn't just happen. We the people who are here today, we have to create it with intention and persistence and radical love. We must collectively advocate and work towards structural and systemic changes, honoring our shared humanity. Housing is a human right. Homelessness is an issue of injustice. Millions are homeless in the United States, including children and youth, because of deep inequalities and unacceptable oppressions in our society. For people with lived experience who have experienced homelessness or are currently living in homelessness, inequalities are clearly visible and provide a deeper understanding that is vital if we are going to bend this arc towards justice. Decades of top-down efforts through research, service provision, resource reallocation, and leadership in terms of, various leadership with policymaking. While certainly we have seen kind of incremental movement, The reality is we have not ended homelessness, and homelessness is in fact rising in so many communities. It is unacceptable. And we have not ended homelessness because it requires fundamental changes to our social and our economic systems. It also requires unity, love, and action, mindful, real action. Public policy, service organizations, community planning require insight and leadership from people with lived experience at all levels in order to achieve genuine, sustainable, transformative change, change that is needed in our country, in our communities, in our world. Lived experience is valuable to transformative leadership. And by this, at the National Coalition for the Homeless, we do not simply mean inclusion as a token, member on a board or at an organization, but we mean equal partners, to be given agency, to actually honor and affirm diversity in terms of expertise and experience, together reimagining and rebuilding healthier communities and a more just world. We must confront unequal relations of power. And to do that, we have to have lived experience at our tables, making decisions, being part of the solutions that our world needs. We have to look at the intersectional isms, racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism. All of us, especially our children, deserve a better world. As Congressman John Lewis wisely encouraged all of us to do, and our leader and my dear friend Donald Whitehead alluded to in his remarks earlier, let us get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and let us help redeem the soul of America. We, the people, let us work together to end homelessness in the United States, to build a healthier world for our children. Let us bring America home now, not tomorrow, now. We can do this. I am sending everyone so much love and abundant gratitude, onwards and upwards together.
Dr. Brown, Rajni, thank you so much for your powerful words. And we really appreciate you, the work you do in the community, the work you do with the National Coalition. We look forward to partnering with you on this campaign. Our next speaker is a friend of mine for a very long time. A lot of you will know him. You just heard him on a tape, but you'll hear him in person here. Our campaign organizer, Jeff Olivet.
Thank you, Donald. And it's really great to be with all of you today. I have the job of giving you a quick overview of the campaign itself and just talking about what this thing is and how it's going to work. Today is the official launch of the Bring America Home Now campaign, a grassroots campaign designed to end homelessness in the United States in a comprehensive, forward-looking, sustainable way. The goal is to pass legislation on multiple fronts in order to create large-scale, systemic, and lasting solutions to homelessness. You know, a lot of the advocacy over many years has either been protecting the funding streams that do exist, or trying to kind of cobble together just enough to keep an emergency response system going. But we've not really gone upstream in a big way to prevent homelessness, and we've certainly not created affordable housing and access to healthcare on a level that would solve homelessness for people. So the idea is work on multiple fronts at the same time. The other thing that's critical about this campaign is that it is a multi-agency effort. The National Coalition for the Homeless is the spearhead organization, but we already have dozens of other organizations, national, state, and local, signed on, and that list of endorsements will only continue to grow. We know that there are a lot of other wonderful campaigns that exist. Many of those are already aligned with our work here, and we're aligned with their work. The things that distinguish this campaign, and you've heard these from Donald, from Rajni, and others already, is the leadership by people who have themselves been closest to the problem, people who have themselves experienced homelessness. And the majority of people you'll hear from today, the majority of people guiding the work of the campaign, in fact, the majority of staff and board members of the National Coalition for the Homeless have themselves been homeless. And that voice is the central voice. It's not just that a couple of seats need to be added to the table. It needs to be a different table, and it needs to be a table that is led by and dominated by people who have actually experienced the crisis of homelessness. Another hallmark of this campaign is that it is grounded in grassroots organizing. It is not limited to the halls of power in Washington, although we hope to have influence there too. It is starting with and connecting to the grassroots at the local community. And a lot of the work that will unfold over the next few months will really be energized by and informed by all of that grassroots organizing. And then finally, the deep commitment to racial justice and an understanding that homelessness is a symptom of structural racism. Those are the things that ground and distinguish this campaign. There are 5 key policy areas: housing, healthcare, livable incomes, education training, and civil rights and anti-racism. Without addressing any one of those components, our solutions to homelessness will be incomplete and unsustainable. As far as the architecture of the campaign, we've got those policy areas that I talked about, and there'll be work going on in each of those and legislation happening in each of those. The partnerships are central to the work of this campaign. You'll hear from more from Sue in a few minutes on this. The communications that happen among the channels that NCH has, that all of the other partners here have, are going to be critical for getting the word out and mobilizing the grassroots. And then around grassroots organizing, we hope this campaign will be infused with art and music and creativity and the sort of immensely successful campaign tactics that have played out in climate justice movements and marriage equality movements and anti-racism movements. We want to draw on all of that. As of today, we have a new campaign website, bringamericahomenow.org. You can learn more about the campaign. You can also endorse the campaign and sign your organization on. So please visit the website. If you have not already signed on, please go there and endorse the campaign. You can also download a 2-page overview that you can share around with your friends and colleagues and other organizations to inform them about the campaign and its work. In terms of next steps, over the next few weeks, we'll be refining those policy areas and working with all of our partners to figure out legislative priorities and really where we want to put our energy. You'll hear more later from Diane Yentel about the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's Housed campaign. This campaign certainly aligns squarely with that, and with the work of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council and many of the other partners. All of that policy will get fine-tuned in the coming weeks. We'll continue outreach to partners to grow this collective power that we share together. We'll be developing a community organizing toolkit to support the campaign and tap into the grassroots work that so many of you are involved in. And with that, I will turn it back to Donald to keep us moving. But thank you all very much for being here today. Thank you for your interest in the campaign, and thank you in advance for all of your work going forward.
Thank you, Jeff. We are so proud of the work that Jeff and our core team of partners and NCH board members and people who have experienced homelessness are doing to really organize this campaign. One of the most important elements is the partnerships we're developing. We already know from history what can happen when groups of people from around the country, when organizations come together. My hope is that the advocacy going on around this country can come together, that we won't be working to get our piece of the pie, we'll be working to get the whole pie. And we're hoping that as we move forward, we'll continue to gain some of these amazing advocates collectively so that we can end homelessness in America. With that, I'm going to give you our next speaker, who's going to talk about those partnerships. She is a board president of the National Coalition for the Homeless. Please welcome Sue Watliff Phillips.
Thank you, Donald, and thank you all for joining us today. We are just so excited to have you all as a part of the Bringing America Home Now campaign. We are just excited to have Donald back as our Executive Director of the National Coalition for the Homeless, and the great expansion that we've been able to do on staff and board. And as Jeff mentioned, over half of our board have experienced homelessness, as well as over half of our board are from diverse communities. I also experienced homelessness as a teenager when I got hurt in sports at the University of Minnesota and was not able to continue to work my job and lost my housing and needed to move back in with my family. I've had the honor to serve God by working with people experiencing homelessness for over 53 years. Together, we are working together to end homelessness by addressing the immediate needs of people experiencing homelessness while we address the structural causes and the systemic causes of racism that cause homelessness. People who have experienced homelessness need to be at every decision-making table and need to be involved in the implementation of all the solutions. They need to be critical partners, and they are the experts that we need to have at the table in ending homelessness. As a founding member of NCH in the early 80s and of MICA, the Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing, which I'm the executive director of in the metro area, it has been very clear to me throughout our history that having these types of key partnerships are the strategic way to bring America home now. At MICA, we have a verse from Micah 6:8. It says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" I think those are the key strategies to successful strategic partnerships. First is that we all need to be working for justice, for equity, and for the common good, so that everyone has a safe, decent, accessible home that's affordable for them. We need to love mercy. We all make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've fallen down. We need to forgive each other and help each other. We need to be people of grace and to love and treat other people the way that we want to be treated. And then to walk humbly. We are all created with a voice and with power. And so is everyone else. So how do we work together to utilize all that power and those wonderful voices as we agree that everyone needs a home, but that we also disagree in how we're going to do that across our very diverse country, our very diverse communities, and the needs for each of us in having a home. So over the last 40 years, many of us here on this webinar today have joined together and worked together to accomplish some really incredible pieces. The passage of the McKinney-Vento Act in the mid-1980s, that came from grassroots organizing, the great sleep out, actions across the country, and the great policy work that was done. We also had the Hands Across America and marches across America, taking the boards off buildings and occupying buildings, and then the Housing Now March in 1989, what was a precursor for us passing the National Affordable Housing Act, the Cranston-Gonzalez Act in 1990. You'll get to hear in just a few minutes from Barbara Duffield, who ran 2 Kids' Days on Capitol Hill in 2000 and 2001. I had the honor and blessing to be the acting executive director of the National Coalition at that time. And it was an incredible experience seeing these kids from across the country televised, telling their stories to congressional members. And out of that came the Education for Homeless Children and Youth Act. And then with our great partner, the National Low Income Housing Coalition, and many of you, we worked together initially in 2001, then Representative Sanders, now Senator Sanders, in the introduction of the Housing Trust Fund, and then by working together and pulling thousands of groups together across the country, passed the National Housing Trust Fund in 2008. Today, we are asking you to join us as partners in the Bring America Home Now campaign to end homelessness in the U.S. by ensuring that everyone, without exception, has a safe, decent, accessible home that is affordable to them. It is my honor now to introduce a video from Freedom from the Streets, No More Streets, the homeless union in Minnesota that they put together. These are folks that I know personally. They are on Micah's board, and I work with them every week. And they are folks that have experienced homelessness or been at risk of homelessness. And they are organizing people in the community and coming up with wonderful solutions. They're wonderful folks. So as I hope you will join me in listening as they give us these solutions and as they want to help in implementing those solutions to bring us home. Thank you so much.
In November 2020, we interviewed 5 people from a new union of unhoused community members at an Extended Stay America hotel in Bloomington, Minnesota. They spoke directly about the needs of people experiencing homelessness in the Twin Cities area.
Not only do we have to worry about this COVID and the cold, and the cops, that's just enough right there, But then you want to take away our roofs, you know what I mean? We put this union in place so that we can know that we're not alone. And just because we're behind a door or a wall or at a different hotel, we see each other. And we're still connected. And we're gonna stay connected.
We just want to be heard, you know what I'm saying? We got this union together. And we're going to stand up because we got that right, you know what I'm saying? That's what it's called union. That's what union for, unity.
I am glad that the union is formed because the simple fact is they are made of people of homeless and lived experience.
I'm fed up. I'm fed up with how the government treats people here. All these corrupt people that are in office now are not going to help us change our world.
We have Jeff Bezos and all these millionaires hoarding their wealth when they can cure the homelessness and the poverty in this country single-handedly.
We all we got. Because we can't depend on the ones that are in the power positions.
Everywhere they go, they say shelter. They got shelter. They can't even fit 500 people in their shelter right now. So they need to stop lying. Stop lying to themselves. Stop lying to the people.
There's systems that are there, but they're overloaded. There's not enough.
Point blank, shelters is not a solution. Nobody wants to go to a shelter. And not only that, but there's not many family shelters in the state of Minnesota that will let families go in there.
And never in my 50 years of life, I ever felt the cold the way I felt it in this city and state.
To me, it's a solution. It's a deeply affordable housing, 30%.
Putting a rent cap on these landlords, making them put a cap on that rent, saying that you can't charge $1,500 for a 1-bedroom. Making sure that when you have an apartment building that has 10 or more apartments in it, that at least 3 to 5 of them are affordable.
The sad thing is there's plenty of housing out there, but where are the affordable housings for people that are low income? Where is the 30% housing?
We don't need housing where you are taking care of people 24/7.
We're human beings, you know what I'm saying? We're not here to stir up no ruckus or nothing like that,
We're tired of relocating. We're tired of being shuffled around.
This system needs to change. The only way we are going to change is if we all stand up together and speak. Use your voice. Stop being scared. Stop letting the government define who you are as a person. Stop letting the government control you.
2021 is not going to look like 2020. It's not going to look like 2020.
Welcome back. We want to thank those members of Freedom from the Streets for sharing their important video. We thank them very much for doing that. We're going to go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Diane Yentl. Diane Yentl, I'm sorry, Diane. I sometimes get a little nervous. But thank you so much. She needs no introduction. She is the executive director of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Amazing advocate. You see her often on MSNBC, and I'll let her do the rest. But thank you, Diane, for joining us today.
Hi, Donald. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you, with the National Coalition for the Homeless, for the launch of this important campaign to bring America home now. Certainly, the COVID-19 pandemic made clear that affordable homes are a prerequisite for individual and public health. But renters and unhoused people, predominantly people of color, struggled to remain safely and stably housed throughout the pandemic, mostly because of the underlying affordable housing crisis that existed pre-pandemic. At that time, there was a shortage of nearly 7 million affordable and available rental homes for America's lowest income people. So another way of saying that same number is for every 10 of the lowest income renter households, there were fewer than 4 apartments that were affordable and available to them. This is why we have homelessness in our country. It's why we have housing poverty in our country. And without affordable options, 10 million very low income households spent more than half of their limited incomes on rent and utilities, leaving them one financial shock away from missing rent and facing eviction, or in worst cases, becoming homeless. And the coronavirus and its economic fallout was that financial shock. They lost jobs and wages, they had increased internet, childcare, healthcare, food expenses, and they fell behind on rent. And by January of this year, 9 million renter households owed an estimated $50 billion in rent and utility arrears. So in response, President Biden extended the federal eviction moratorium through June 30th, and Congress provided unprecedented resources for renters, $46.5 billion in emergency rental assistance, and additional money for communities to address homelessness. So now states and cities are working to get those resources to the lowest income and most marginalized renters, but it is slow going and they need more time. So we are urging the Biden administration to give more time by extending that moratorium and getting this emergency rental assistance to these low-income renters to avoid a major increase in homelessness, a historic wave of evictions this summer and fall. If the moratorium were to expire at the end of this month, with 6 million renter households still behind on rent, and before that rental assistance reaches them, the country will face an historic wave in evictions and potentially a major increase in homelessness. So we have to do all we can to prevent that. And we have to, at long last, address the long-standing shortage of homes for the lowest income people that brought us to the brink of an eviction tsunami during a global pandemic. We have to seize this extraordinary moment and opportunity to invest in long-term solutions to end homelessness and end housing poverty once and for all. And we have a tremendous opportunity to do so right now as Congress considers a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure spending package, and as President Biden and Chairwoman Maxine Waters have proposed hundreds of billions of dollars in investments for affordable housing. So it's really a once in a lifetime opportunity. Those of us who have been doing this work for years or for decades, this is the moment we've been waiting for to get the kind of investments and anti-racist policy reforms to programs needed so that it works for the people who are most harmed by our country's inequitable by design housing system. So that's why I am so pleased to stand today with the National Coalition for the Homeless for the launch of this important campaign, just as the National Coalition for the Homeless stood with NLIHC when we recently launched our Housed campaign for universal, stable, affordable homes. So together, we will push Congress to make the long-term sustained investments and solutions needed to keep the lowest income people safely, affordably, and accessibly housed. And we will push for those anti-racist policy and programs reforms that are needed to ensure that these solutions work for the Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other marginalized people who are so harmed by today's system. So together we will push for 4 sets of solutions. 1, to expand rental assistance, to make it universally available to all eligible households in need. Currently, only 1 in every 4 households in need and eligible for receives housing assistance. That should be 4 out of 4. 2, we have to build more homes affordable to the lowest income people through an investment of $45 billion for the National Housing Trust Fund. And we have to preserve our country's existing affordable housing infrastructure, primarily public housing, with $70 billion for needed capital repairs. We will also work to get the federal government to incentivize or require state and local governments that receive these trillions of dollars that may be coming soon to eliminate restrictive zoning rules that increase the cost of development, limit housing supply for all renters, and reinforce segregation and structural racism in housing and other systems. And finally, Congress must, whether in an infrastructure bill or elsewhere, rebalance the power that currently tilts so heavily in favor of landlords at the expense of renters. We need a whole set of robust renter protections to get and keep people housed. I and others have long said that homelessness and housing poverty are a choice, not by the people who experience it, but by the policymakers who advance public policies that exacerbate or maintain it. We can choose otherwise. We have long had the solutions, and as a country, certainly we have the resources. We've only ever lacked the political will, and together we are building that will, and we now have the opportunity to use it to achieve housing justice. I truly believe that if we get this right, many years from now, we'll look back and remember 2020 as the year of the pandemic, the year that changed us all, and 2021 as the year we began to end homelessness and housing poverty in our country once and for all. So again, Donald and everybody at the National Coalition for the Homeless, thank you for having me here today for the launch, and I'm looking forward to the work together in the future.
Diane, thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership. A lot of what we see happening in Congress and on Capitol Hill could not have happened without leadership from the National Low Income Housing Coalition and leadership from you, Diane. And we know that we've done this before. We partnered on the National Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we were able to accomplish that amazing goal. And it only happened when people who are listening today in their communities made it known that this end to homelessness is a priority. And we hope you'll do that today. We hope you'll join us. And we hope you'll write your congressperson and get them to join us in this incredible campaign and this credible work to end homelessness. And we want to share with you another video from another member of Congress who's truly been a champion, who we should applaud for their work and who we should see as a symbol as we work to get other Congress people from around the country involved. One of the longtime champions of this issue and champion of human rights is Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Thank you, Donald, for that very kind introduction, and to the National Coalition for the Homeless for your tremendous advocacy. As we fight a pandemic that has pushed millions into poverty, your work to support the health and well-being of our communities is more important now than ever. Thank you so much. We have seen how the COVID-19 pandemic created a housing crisis on top of a public health crisis. Currently, 1 in 5 renters is behind on their payments, and over 10 million homeowners are behind on their mortgages. Communities of color who have been hit the hardest by this crisis due to systemic racism and inequality are at an even greater risk of eviction. Additionally, many more people experiencing homelessness are older adults, have underlying medical conditions, and access homeless services in group settings, putting them at a higher risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We must take the immediate crisis of the homelessness during this pandemic as well as implement systemic, and lasting solutions to homelessness in our nation. That is why I fought so hard alongside Democrats and the Biden administration to pass the American Rescue Plan, which includes billions of dollars for emergency rental assistance, mortgage relief, and vouchers for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. We must also work to quickly pass the American Jobs Plan, which is a step toward investing in the critical housing and infrastructure which our country so desperately needs. I am proud to be working alongside Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, who has been a steadfast advocate for dismantling structural inequities in our housing system. She is leading efforts to invest billions for homeless assistance grants, as well as investment in increasing the production of affordable housing. If we're going to end homelessness once and for all, we need bold structural change. Now, I recently unveiled a resolution with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and the Poor People's Campaign that lays out a bold vision on how to address the needs of the 140 million people suffering each day from poverty. This resolution on poverty serves as a roadmap to build equitable policies from the bottom up, including housing, healthcare, welfare, clean water, and education. It calls for a shift in our priorities away from wasteful defense spending and tax breaks for the wealthy to addressing the needs of our country. Homelessness is an issue we all play a part in addressing. I will continue fighting alongside you until each and every one of our unhoused friends, family members, and communities are housed in safe and secure and dignified housing. Thank you again to the advocates for joining us, for your commitment and our work in our communities. And yes, housing is a basic human right. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Lee. That was amazing. And we are about to go to another video presentation. We all know that healthcare is a human right in this country, and who better to deliver that message than Bobby Watts, Executive Director of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council.
Hello, I'm Bobby Watts, the CEO of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, and I'm honored to be here to represent the council at the outset of this really important and momentous campaign. I'd like to begin by congratulating the National Coalition for the Homeless and the many organizations that have joined together to bring America home now. I was asked to speak for a few moments on the topic that healthcare is a human right. And I want to start by saying that of all of the countries in the world, America is the country that we should be beyond having to have this debate or even having to state this. And I say that because this idea is as old as America is. The preamble to the Declaration of Independence states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." On to say that the purpose of government is to secure these rights on behalf of its people, not protect, not defend, but to secure, to make sure that people have these rights realized in their lives. Now, I would like to state that healthcare and housing are human rights because we have to acknowledge that they are necessary for life. We can't maintain life without healthcare, and we can't have a full life and maintain and reach our full potential without housing. So I'd like to give some of the public health implications of our lack of recognizing that healthcare is a human right. People without homes suffer poorer health than their housed neighbors. In fact, for every medical condition, it is found at rates 2 to 4 times or more higher among people without homes than those who are housed. And we can just look very briefly at some of these causes. Just think of what are some of the conditions that are bound up with living without the protection of a wall, of a roof, of a door. There is incredible stress and trauma and violence. And one of the things that is greatly overlooked among people experiencing homelessness, and I really believe it is a health crisis, a public health crisis, an epidemic, is the amount of sleep deprivation. Whether you are living on a street or in a crowded dormitory room, in a shelter, one of the things that is common to people experiencing homelessness is they have poor sleep. It is very hard to get sleep. And sleep deprivation is not only hard for our physical health, we know that it weakens our immune system, but it also does tremendous things to our mood, makes us in a bad mood, makes it difficult for us to make good decisions and good judgments. And in fact, sleep deprivation is a form of torture. Being without a home also affects our physical health in the sense of that makes it much more likely, if you are without a home, that you'll be susceptible to contagious diseases. In a congregate setting, such as shelters, airborne diseases such as COVID or the flu are much more easily transmitted to one another. Also, if you're living in an encampment, just not having some things that are necessary to maintain hygiene, such as access to clean running water to wash your hands to maintain hygiene, that leads to the spread of diseases. Housing is so important for health that for every medical condition, any doctor will tell you or nurse practitioner will tell you that it is harder to treat that condition if someone is without housing than when they are housed. We know that providing housing helps to address the health needs of people, whether that is someone with a physical condition such as diabetes or a fracture, a broken foot, or it is someone struggling with mental illness or substance use disorders. Having a home makes it easier to treat these conditions and addresses the healthcare needs of every person. I would like to close by saying I really appreciate the title of this campaign, Bring America Home. I like the word bring because it is not saying send America home, but it implies that we want to close the distance between us and other people, or we want to keep them close as we are traveling, that we will be traveling towards a common destination together. And now, we need to bring America home now. I've been doing this work of providing healthcare to people without homes for 30 years, and it is a national disgrace. It is a public health crisis. It is a moral crisis that the richest country on earth allows its people to live in streets and in shelters without needed homes. So we don't have a day to waste. Every day we waste means another person gets sick, another person dies prematurely because we have not provided healthcare, we have not provided housing. So on the eve of Juneteenth and in the shadow of July 4th, this campaign is extremely timely in 2021. It will allow America to have a better chance to reach its potential and move closer to its goal of having everyone treated equally. Bringing everyone in America home will help to reduce the racial disparities that exist in our countries and will help to advance social justice by giving everyone what they need: healthcare, housing, and we will reach our goal of securing those human rights for everyone in this country. Thank you for this important work, and the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council stand shoulder to shoulder with you, looking forward to joining our work together to bring America home now. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend Bobby Watts. Thank you so much for that really, really powerful statement and set of words that really bring home the idea that healthcare is a human right. We're going to keep moving. We still have a few speakers left, a few amazing speakers. One of the newer board members of the National Coalition for the Homeless, who also is the president of one of the most powerful advocacy agencies in this country. Our next speaker is the president of NOW, the National Organization of Women, Christian Nunez.
Thank you very much, Donald. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased to be here and honored to be here among all of you and to be a part of this virtual kickoff to Bring America Home Now campaign. NOW is honored to be a partner in this critical work to address the crisis of homelessness. As we know, the impact of systematic injustices on this critical issue and the structural racism that plays a part in this, as well as the gender injustices that play a part in economic injustice that contributes to homelessness for women and children. We know that women and families are the fastest growing segments of the homeless population, with 34% of the total homeless population being composed of families. In addition, Black families are disproportionately represented for up to 43% of the homeless families. Women accounted for overwhelmingly majority of the jobs lost during the COVID pandemic, and we refer to it as the C-section, where women are predominantly the primary caregivers. However, during COVID, they lost 12.1 million jobs between February and April of 2020. And we also know over the next 4 years, as a consequence of COVID-19, we will see twice as many individuals become homeless as more than the Great Recession. And according to the National Women's Law Center, we will see additional women who still have not returned from work because of COVID and job loss and who cannot go back because of things like childcare and inability to find work because of COVID and the job loss. So therefore, they will become homeless. We know that gender and racial inequalities and injustices make it harder for women to afford housing. And the women's wage gap remains huge, with women in the US working typically paid 82% of every dollar for the white man. But the gender gap extremely expands greater when we talk about Black women only earning 62% on the dollar, Latinx Latino women earning 55 cents on the white man's dollar, Native Hawaiian and Pacific women earning 63 cents, and Native Indigenous women only earning 60 cents on that dollar. So if you think about that gender wage gap as we look at the crosses and intersection of race and gender and economics, what's more disproportionate is when we look at low paid jobs in the workforce. Women make up 64% of that workforce for the 40 lowest paid jobs in numbers before and after COVID. So this is how we look at gender and how it plays in income, and why it's so important that we not only talk about raising the wage, but we also talk about how income plays into the homelessness population and how income plays into, adds up to dollars and cents. A modest 2-bedroom apartment that will require a woman to spend more than 30% of her income of rent will require a full-time worker to earn $23.96 per hour. Now we know minimum wage is only $7.25 an hour, but we just heard that an average worker full-time would need to earn $23.96 in order to get a 2-bedroom modest apartment. And most women are working for a minimum wage. They would have to labor 97 hours per week just to make that rent. Median wealth for a working age man is 3 times the median wealth for a single working age woman, and women of color face an even greater wealth gap. And we're talking about wealth, we're talking about free income that does not have debt, that is free in your bank, just in case you need it, right, for emergencies. So we look back in 2013, the white non-Hispanic man had wealth of $28,000 in their bank accounts, compared to $100 for a single Hispanic Latino woman and $200 for a single working Black woman. And women remain segregated into jobs where they're underpaid and undervalued. And they make up 95% of the workforce in industries considered women's work, such as home care, childcare, and housekeeping. Yet they are not guaranteed those privileges of family work, family paid leave, childcare, or all the provisions that we are asking them to work for. And so we go, well, why can't they afford childcare? Why are they one paycheck away from being homeless? Because we're asking them to do jobs we don't give them benefits for. So as we continue to look at the gender and racial discriminations, they are direct impacts of the wage gap that leaves women behind and women of color even further behind. And they are direct causes of homelessness. So as we come forward with this Bring America Home campaign, it's important that we realize that we cannot eradicate homelessness. We cannot create systems or policies or solutions in silos. And we cannot fight one system of oppression unilaterally without looking at the root cause of systematic racism that branches into all the systems. So I'm so excited that this Bring America Home campaign is looking at multiple systems and how we have to address it all. And it will take a unified effort for all of us together. And like this coalition is doing today, this campaign is doing today, we can address it if we're all working together. So I'm super excited to see what we're going to do. And I ask you all to get involved so that we can finally do resources to bring America home.
Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you so much for being a partner and all of the amazing work that you're doing over at Now. And we really appreciate you being here with us today. Our next speaker needs no introduction. She is a superstar in homeless advocacy, just a tireless advocate. Have been privileged to work with her for over 20 years. Without further ado, I give you Barbara Duffield, the Executive Director of Schoolhouse Connection.
Thank you very much, Donald. It's great to be part of the Kickoff event. In October of 1993, as a fairly recent graduate from college, I found a book on internships in Washington, D.C., and there was a listing for the National Coalition for the Homeless and to contact Michael Stoops. And I did, and the rest is history. I spent more than 10 years working at the National Coalition for the Homeless. And one of the lessons that I carry with me to this day is more than an appreciation for grassroots, but a central value of grassroots organizing and approaching advocacy across any issue. The issue I'm speaking about today is specifically education. Schoolhouse Connection is a national organization working to overcome homelessness through education. We work from birth through post-secondary and see education as fundamental to lasting exits from homelessness and also as a critical part of the overall response system. Having worked on this issue for as long as I have, and I think part of what's motivating the campaign today is that we can't do things the same way things have been done in the past. The slogans that have been slogans in the past, the priorities that have been the priorities cannot be the same. And specifically, if we're actually going to make a dent in the issue of homelessness, we have to prioritize children. We have to prioritize young children, school-age children, and our youth to make sure that we're breaking cycles. And we need to put child and youth serving systems at the forefront, not as an afterthought in the response to homelessness. If we don't do that, we're going to continue with generations of homelessness to come. So just to consider the evidence, we know right now from the public school system and from early childhood programs that pre-pandemic child and youth homelessness was at record levels. Public schools identified 1.5 million children and youth. That's just identified in the year 17-18 before the pandemic. That was the highest on record. We also know for our young children, our infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, that another 1.4 million young children are estimated to be homeless. That comes from the U.S. Department of Education and their work with data from Head Start and other early childhood programs. So at the very beginning of human development, homelessness impacts children's ability to learn, to grow, and to be all that they can and should be. We also know for our adolescents, our youth who are experiencing homelessness, particularly youth on our own, that at least 1 in 30 adolescents aged 13 to 17 and nearly 1 in 10 young adults 18 to 24 will be homeless over the course of a year. So this is a cause this is the crisis, cause for concern, particularly right now post-pandemic. as we know that the stressors are even greater, not only for people who are currently experiencing homelessness, our children, youth, and families, but also for those who are at risk and on the verge of experiencing homelessness. One of the big challenges and what schools see and why public schools and early childhood programs are so important is because there is a right to an education in every school, in every community in the country. So unlike shelter beds, unlike the pig count, public schools have a lens on this issue that is unique and unparalleled. They have their eyes on children every day, day after day, year after year. And of course, the pandemic has disrupted all of that, but still it's a lens that lets us know more about the dynamics of child and youth homelessness than any other system. And it also tells us that most of our children and youth experiencing homelessness aren't visible. They are staying with other people temporarily in situations that are not safe, that are not stable, that are harmful to them. And yet they're not considered homeless by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, not prioritized for assistance, even though all the studies that we have, everything shows that that experience of staying with other people, of being in motels, is just as injurious to education, to health and development. So if we're going to solve homelessness, we have to see it. We have to know how children, youth, and families experience it. And that means changing HUD's definition of homelessness and aligning it to the definitions that are used by Department of Ed and HHS. I also really appreciate about this campaign the acknowledgement that family and youth homelessness and all homelessness doesn't occur in isolation from other inequities in our society, and in particular, racial inequity. So we know too, as has been noted by many speakers, that systemic racism is a driver of homelessness. And we see that in the school front in terms of the statistics of which children and youth are more likely to be experiencing homelessness, and also to be disciplined, and also to be absent, and also to have many other health risks. So these are intersectional issues that we need to address together. Also, again, a note and appreciation for the acknowledgement that it takes all of these various issues, housing, income, employment, healthcare, education, working together. Because again, we see the impact in education. We know that lack of a high school degree or GED is the single greatest risk factor associated with homelessness as a young adult. The next greatest risk factor is having a child, and the third is having a low income. So solely looking at homelessness as a housing issue is a recipe for failure. And it makes for a nice slogan, but it's not going to get us forward. We have to look at all of these factors if we're looking at long-term exits from homelessness. And also, we need to be able to look at the issues around children and youth with disabilities and how those protections play out for our children, both from birth all the way through post-secondary of education. So again, just looking at what's been done in the past and what needs to change, we know that we can't just be looking at the most visible symptoms of homelessness. We have to be looking at all populations. We know, for example, that unsheltered homeless adults were much more likely to be homeless as children. So it's not just about addressing what we currently see, it's about going upstream, all the way upstream to prevent homelessness from occurring. And that means, again, working with children, youth, families, and all of those systems that are serving them. So again, just want to say we really appreciate being part of this campaign, appreciate the civil rights aspect, and again, education being an enforceable right, particularly for the McKinney-Vento pieces that public schools have, and we need to extend those protections into early childhood, into post-secondary, and work with our other agencies as we bring all of this together, again, to go upstream to prevent and solve homelessness. Thank you, Donald, and thank you, the National Coalition for the Homeless.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you. Always a wealth of information, always an amazing advocate. Thank you so much. And speaking of amazing advocates, we have another amazing advocate coming up. I've known her for a while because of her incredible work in Baltimore City, but she's now at the national level and bringing just a force, a power, of wisdom to the National Law Center on Homelessness. We thank you very much for joining us, Antonia Fasanelli.
Thank you, Donald. I am so honored to join you for the launch of this critical Bring America Home Now campaign, and to bring with me the partnership of the National Homelessness Law Center. Homelessness is a human right. We are grateful the president and this federal administration and so many members of Congress have recognized that housing is a fundamental basic need for human survival. Yet housing, this critical need, is out of reach for hundreds of thousands of residents of our nation. And we know with the impending expiration of eviction moratoria that the numbers will only continue to grow. Yet, across the country, unhoused persons are continuously under attack. Instead of communities offering solutions to homelessness, like housing and services, persons experiencing homelessness are criminalized, arrested, cited, and penalized simply because they cannot afford a home of their own. In places like Oregon, people are punished for resting, even though they live in communities that do not even have an emergency shelter. In Colorado and other states, persons who have no choice but to live outside are subject to random sweeps of their tents that have resulted in the loss of critical personal belongings, identifications, and other documents that people need to survive. Laws like these that criminalize homelessness are on the rise. And despite guidance from the Centers for Disease Control during the pandemic to protect persons in encampments unless housing or hotel space is found, local communities are destroying these temporary and safer homes. This is inhumane. This is unconstitutional. It is deeply harmful to persons experiencing homelessness, and it disproportionately affects persons of color. It is bad policy for local communities to criminalize homelessness. It is more costly for local communities to arrest persons experiencing homelessness than it is for them to pay for housing. Homelessness is not a police issue, which is why we are so pleased to be a partner with the National Coalition for the Homeless on this Bring America Home Now campaign. Just as the National Coalition has partnered with us, the National Homelessness Law Center, on our Housing Not Handcuffs campaign, which you can follow at housingnothandcuffs.org. Let's end homelessness together, not police it, and bring America home now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia. And thank you for all of our speakers, just some amazing speakers. We have a couple more to go, and we hope you'll stay with us through the end. We started a couple of minutes late, so I thank you all for joining us and staying in so far. Just a couple more speakers to go, but amazing speakers. You don't want to miss them. Our next speaker is going to share with you some of her personal history of overcoming homelessness. We know that homelessness is not a permanent condition, that people go on to great things. And our next speaker, board member for the National Coalition for the Homeless, the secretary, Christina Garcia, will share with you the amazing opportunity that people have to overcome and be the best that they can be. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Donald. I'm thankful to be here today with everyone. Hello. Again, my name is Christina Galindo Garcia. I am a Taína Chicana from San Francisco, born and raised on the streets of the Mission District. I'm here to share just a bit of my story. My past story is one filled with many experiences of trauma, abuse, suffering, and loss. I lived through homelessness as a child and for many years as an adult, couch surfed, slept in tents, on stairwells and doorways. All the while I struggled with drug addiction and severe depression that went untreated for many years. My physical health on the streets deteriorated so bad that I came into close contact with death too many times than I can count. Experiencing homelessness was like living as a ghost. I was invisible. I had no rights. I had no voice. I was treated with disdain by most people that I came into contact with. It was impossible to not feel worthless and hopeless. I never wanted to be homeless. I felt trapped. My present story is very different. I'm the mother of 3 beautiful children, wife to a wonderful husband. I've obtained college degrees. I have a meaningful career at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, where I get to serve people going through similar experiences that I went through. But also, I'm a homeowner. And none of this would have been possible without the support that I received. You see, housing is the most basic human need, and it's the basis for a better life. I remember being afraid to fall asleep for fear that I would again be sexually abused or robbed. But once I had a stable place to live, I was able to receive the services that I needed so bad. Once I was able to get right, I had an opportunity to go back to school and obtain sustainable employment. And it gave me the self-confidence and self-respect I needed to engage with my community in positive ways. I'm grounded now by that community that I've been able to develop. I'm also grateful for the peer mentors and other service providers with lived experience who gave me hope and showed me a different way. Learning from those who could relate to what I was going through was the key to my success. I'm thankful now to be able to give back and serve others that are journeying out of homelessness. Now, I share my story to say that it can work. We can end homelessness. We need housing, healthcare, education, livable wages available to everyone. So I close by saying thank you. I know we're running out of time, so I'll be super brief. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this campaign. And thank you for fighting for our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness.
Christina, thank you so much. Just such a powerful story, and the reason we're all here today. We know that through our support, through our advocacy, lives can change, deferred dreams can be realized, and we see it every day, and Christina is an example of that. Our next speaker is an incredible advocate in his own right as well. He's also a new board member for the National Coalition for the Homeless. Actually, we were out of order, I guess, but that's okay. We will improvise here. Our next speaker is a former board member for the National Coalition for the Homeless, one of the most passionate advocates I know. He's the executive director of the Western Regional Advocacy Project, or WRAP. Please join us in welcoming Paul Bowden.
Yeah, hey, everybody, and thanks for that clarification, Donald. I was a little surprised I'm a board member again. Before I get started, I wanted to let people know there was a very powerful homeless desk image that was in the very first videos that we saw about the historical aspect of the Bring Everyone Home campaign. And that banner still hangs outside our office door here, Christina, in the Mission District of San Francisco. But that banner still hangs, and people still come and write notes to loved ones that they've lost on the streets on that banner. It's a very powerful piece of artwork, and we're honored to be housing it for the coalition. I was asked to speak to what we call in WRAP, which is a regional campaign of community-based anti-homeless and human rights organizations. We call accountable community organizing. I mean, it's one thing for those of us that have been homeless to be at the table or to be in the meetings. It's another thing to be able to make sure that you're doing the outreach and the documentation of that outreach to find the common threads in what we're all saying. Our stories are our stories, and they're just like any other person's story. It has its beauty and it has its place, but it's the priorities that come from our stories that dictate our commitment to an organizing campaign. So the mindset of, well, what's acceptable in DC, or what's acceptable at the state capitol, or what does the mayor want to see? We need to get that out of the organizing. We're not organizing for short-term wins. We're 38 years into the advent of contemporary homelessness based on all those systems of oppression to poor people and to immigrant community members and to Native community members, and disabled members. Like, these systems of oppression is what we need to be organizing around. Yeah, a lot of us, come from the street because the housing issues got so much worse in the early 80s than they were even before that. But that's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's about creating systems of accountability and systems of legal and legislative representation that actually defend the human rights that we all fight so hard for. And that can't happen if we're just brought into the table or brought into the discussion when appropriate. That's got to be at the core of all the research, of all the litigation, of all the legislation. You listen to that Minnesota video, Representative Omar's Homes for All Act, which many of the Democrats wouldn't support because they didn't think it was winnable. That's what they're calling for. And that's what needs to be reflected in the priorities of an organizing campaign that truly is saying that it represents the experiences and the priorities of poor and homeless people. And so I thank you very much for your time. I know we're running late. WRAPHOME, WRAPHOME.org is our website, and all of our information, all of our research, all of our artwork can be downloaded for free. And I invite you to check it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my good friend, my longtime friend. I called him old friend one time. He didn't like that. So my longtime friend, Paul Bowden, thank you so much for your powerful words. We have our last speaker, and then we'll go to a closing. But our last speaker is another new member of the National Coalition Board of Directors. It gives me great honor and pride to introduce Dr. Lamont Green from Seattle, King County, and also TAC, the Technical Assistance Collaborative, here to give us some words of wisdom. Thank you so much for joining us, Lamont.
Thank you, Donald. It's pretty hard to go last with all the awesome things that have been said. But as a Navy veteran who has experienced homelessness, this work is very, very close to my heart. I can't tell you how excited I am about the launch of this campaign to build community will across the nation, to make housing a human right once and for all. And no matter where we look, we see that race is still the single largest predictor of outcomes along the social determinants of health. Race determines where a person lives and how they die. And with homelessness, it's no different. Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander groups have the highest rates of homelessness. And the data really highlights what we know. Homelessness is a racial justice issue, a disability justice issue, and for unaccompanied youth and young adults, intersects with homophobia and transphobia. The campaign leads with a racial equity and social justice lens that takes an intersectional approach in developing legislation that unearths and addresses the persistent drivers of inequity. The campaign's grounding in grassroots community organizing offers us an analysis that helps to understand why so many Black, Indigenous, Brown, and disabled people are drastically overrepresented in the homelessness system. To do this, we must examine ways that various institutions are acting as a foot of oppression instead of truly working to eliminate disparities. And this really allows us, as the People Institute would say, to shift from using a needs analysis or a victim analysis to a power analysis. A key part of the campaign's work is to pass legislation that restores power to communities that have been historically and systematically disempowered. And as other folks have mentioned, the campaign recognizes that centering people with lived experience of homelessness in this work is racial equity and social justice work, that lifting up the most marginalized as our teachers and leaders restores power to historically disenfranchised and racially marginalized groups. As Glenn Martin with Just Lead Washington often states, those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, but furthest from power and resources. This campaign and movement shifts the model of development to a recognition that those closest to the problem are often an untapped source of awareness and leadership on the most effective policy solutions. This approach moves away from a paternalistic and deficit-based view of people living homeless to a more integrated approach that recognizes that people with lived experience are essential stakeholders in order to advance more accountable, humanizing, and trauma-informed solutions to homelessness that do not, and I repeat, do not involve criminal legal system interventions in any form. And now is the time. COVID has magnified the increasing rates of unsheltered homelessness across the nation and the glaring and persistent racial inequities steeped in indigenous invisibility, anti-Blackness, and ableism. And so I would like to end with this quote, our excerpt from Arundhati Roy's Pandemic is Portal. And they say here, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. The Bring America Home Now campaign is our portal to ensure housing is a human right once and for all. Thank you.
Lamont, thank you so much. You were at the end of our agenda today because we knew that you would bring us home. We needed a home run hitter, and you were there to do it. Thank you so much. Your words are always so powerful. We truly appreciate you, and we truly appreciate all of you for being here today. Just an incredible, as I said, some of the best minds when it comes to ending homelessness. And now what we want is your help in ending homelessness in America. We want you to call your elected officials. We want you to ask them to make homelessness an entitlement in this country, to make healthcare a human right in this country. We need you to do it today. We need you to call the congressional switchboard and tell your congressperson that you are not satisfied with homelessness. In the words of Martin Luther King, we should not be satisfied until everybody is living in a safe home in the richest country in the history of the world. Again, I thank you all for being here today. Thank you, those that stuck in until the very end. Please join us. We are calling for a summit with the Biden administration, with Nancy Pelosi and Senator Schumer, the brain trust, the leadership in this country. We want you to hear from some of these powerful voices. We're asking you in September to meet us in DC when the country opens again, and let's sit down, let's have a dialogue, and let's end homelessness and bring America home now. So you please join us. Please click on to the website, go to the National Coalition website, and it'll drive you to the Bring America Home Now website. We are working on that link, but go to the website, join the campaign, join the National Coalition for the Homeless. We are all dedicated to ending homelessness in America, and we can do it, but we can't do it by ourselves. We need you. And the last thing you'll hear today is some voices of people with lived experience. They're going to tell you, I've lived experience myself, but I want you to hear from some other people with lived experience, and they're going to close this out today. Thank you again for being here. Thank all of our amazing speakers. Special thanks to Megan Hustings and the rest of the National Coalition team, Jeff Olivet, for making sure that we handled all the technical issues on this webinar. And with that, I give you the Voices of Homelessness webinar participants with a closing statement.
We need a movement that can get a bill passed in Congress that'll provide cities and towns with billions of dollars to build affordable housing for everybody who needs it, even if you don't have a penny. If I had that opportunity, I would have been fine.
I needed mercy. You know what I mean? I needed mercy, and not somebody just to cage me up or to put me in some, I need somebody like you, Donald, who cares. See, we know when people are pulling the wool over our eyes. We know when people are just doing it for a paycheck.
People come out of jail, they don't have a place to live. They should have housing. You come out of the hospital, they should have housing. You age out of foster care, they should have housing. But the federal government is going to have to get involved in the funding of housing instead of cutting the HUD budget. So that's what I think needs to happen.
if I had a safe place to be, there's so much I could do, you know. I can think clearer, you know, if I have some quiet and some calm and it's safe and I don't fear what's going on around me.
If I had was able to start a program, everybody would be in my program to cover every problem in society or within that community who's had victory at what people are failing at.